Hey everybody, here we go for our next video. This one's going to be on cells that are found in bone. And before we get into a discussion of osteoporosis and osteomalacia and some disorders of bone, it's helpful to understand the cells that are found in bone. Before we get into even that conversation, let's remind ourselves that bone is connective tissue, and therefore it's going to have two major ingredients. There's going to be cells, and there's going to be some kind of matrix, some extracellular component that makes it up. So in bone, recall there's an organic part, and that's going to consist of the proteins. Here you see collagen, you see some non-collagenous proteins, and there's also some mucopolysaccharides. And you can tell from even that name, it's going to be some sugar groups that we associate with parts of bone, the organic part of bone. There's also going to be the inorganic part of bone, and you recall that the term for this was hydroxyapatite. Hydroxyapatite refers to the mineral part of bone, the inorganic part of bone, principally going to be calcium and phosphorus. So just a reminder of that. However, I'm going to focus mainly on this part down here. Let's look at the cellular part of bone. Let's look at the four cell types. Osteoprogenitor, you'll see a different term for that in a second. Osteocytes, osteoblasts, and osteoclasts. So the four types of cells that we're going to find characteristic of bone are these four. And osteoprogenitor or osteogenic cells, whenever you see genic or progenit, that means to make. So osteogenic cells are going to be stem cells. And stem cells have two fates. Stem cells make other stem cells, or stem cells will make osteoblasts. So osteogenic cells, again, are going to be the cells that we associate with making the other cells, principally for bone matrix development and bone maintenance. So that's them. Osteoblasts, whenever you see the term blast, that means to build. So osteoblasts are kind of like contractors. They're going to be building the bone matrix. And when we say the matrix, principally they're going to be building this substance. It's called osteoid. Osteoid. Osteoid is going to be a collagen-based, that is a protein-based substance. And once that's put into place, then calcium and phosphate are going to associate with it. So osteoblast is going to put down the matrix, put down the non-living part of bone, if you will, including ultimately the mineralized part of bone. The calcium and phosphate will attach to it. So osteoblasts are bone builders. Now, some of the osteoblasts are going to get trapped within their own construction, kind of like a contractor who builds a house and all of a sudden gets stuck in the middle of the house, maybe. Sorry. Some of the osteoblasts are going to become osteocytes, that is, actual mature bone cells, and their job is to maintain the matrix. And what they do is, in response to stress or pushing and pulling on bone, they may actually make more matrix or less matrix if someone is not very active. So somebody who's running and jogging and putting a lot of stress on their skeleton will develop a thicker skeleton, a heavier skeleton as a result. Flip side, somebody who's not exercising is not going to keep putting matrix into their bone, and their bone will eventually get weaker. So osteocytes are maintaining bone once it's been developed. The last type is a little odd and kind of cool at the same time. Osteoclast. Whenever you see clast, that means to break down. So osteoclasts, their job is to break down bone, which sounds like a bad thing. It really isn't. The term we use for breaking down bone is called resorption. So here's resorb, or resorp with a P, resorption. Osteoclasts are going to resorb bone. Notice they're multinucleate. These are all nuclei here. And they make a lot of proteins, particularly a lot of enzymes, and they're lysozymes. Their lysozymes are going to make these very potent bone-damaging enzymes. So between the bone-damaging enzymes and hydrochloric acid, they're going to destroy the matrix of bone, and they're going to liberate the calcium. They go through, they kind of go along the surface of the bone, and then they're going to break it down, endocytose, that is, pull in most of the good ingredients, and then eventually release those into the interstitial fluid and then into the blood. And the main thing they're going to release is calcium. I know that you want to think that calcium has to go to bone and it has to make bone strong, and it does. However, calcium is also going to be stored in bone. Bone is a calcium bank, and that occasionally we need to draw from it. So bone resorption is going to be liberating calcium and putting it back into the bloodstream. So this is a good thing. The bone resorption, these osteoclasts are kind of different, these cells, because they derive from monocytes, which are kind of white blood cells, but then they differentiate into these specialized bone destroying cells that you see here. The last thing I'm going to have you do, and I can't show you the video because YouTube won't let me in my video, but if you go to your assignment page, you'll see a link for the osteoblast and osteoclast animation. It's particularly good. Recommend you do it. That's this video. We're done.